The sun was just coming up over the city when Jonathan Reed parked his car in the employee lot behind Sterling National Bank. It was a Tuesday morning, and the air was cool and fresh. Jonathan grabbed his coffee cup from the cup holder and checked his watch. He was early, just like always. He liked being the first one to arrive at the bank. It made him feel important. Jonathan had worked at Sterling National Bank for 15 years. He started as a junior teller when he was young, and now he was a senior teller. Everyone at the bank knew him. Some people respected him because he knew all the rules and procedures, but many of his coworkers did not like him very much. They thought he was too strict and mean sometimes. He walked through the back door and turned off the alarm system. The bank was quiet and empty. Jonathan liked this peaceful time before customers arrived. He went to his teller station and put his things away. He straightened his tie and made sure his name tag was perfectly straight. Jonathan believed in looking professional at all times. Other employees started arriving one by one. Sarah, a young teller, said good morning to him. Jonathan just nodded. He was not the type of person who made small talk with his coworkers. He thought chatting and laughing at work was unprofessional. His job was serious business, and he treated it that way. At exactly 9 o'clock, the branch manager unlocked the front doors. The first customers of the day began walking in. An elderly man needed help with his account. A woman wanted to cash a check. A businessman needed to make a large withdrawal. Jonathan handled each transaction efficiently. He was fast and accurate with numbers. That was one thing nobody could deny about him, but Jonathan had a problem that he did not even realize he had. He treated people differently based on how they looked. If a customer wore expensive clothes and looked wealthy, he was polite and helpful. If a customer looked poor or different from him, he became suspicious and rude. He did not think he was being unfair. He told himself he was just being careful and protecting the bank. Around 11 o'clock in the morning, the bank was getting busy. Several people were waiting in line. The phone was ringing. Jonathan was counting money for a customer when he noticed someone new walk through the door. It was a young black girl. She looked about 16 or 17 years old. She wore jeans and a simple t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She carried a worn envelope in her hands, holding it carefully like it was very precious to her. She looked around the bank nervously like she was not sure what to do. The girl's name was Jasmine. She had been saving money for 2 years. Every weekend, she worked at a local restaurant washing dishes and cleaning tables. Every birthday, every holiday, she asked for money instead of gifts. All of that money went into the envelope. She was saving for college. Jasmine dreamed of becoming a nurse someday, just like her mother. Today was a special day for Jasmine. She finally had enough money saved to open a proper savings account. Her mother had told her it was time to put the money in the bank where it would be safe. Jasmine was excited but also nervous. She had never done this by herself before. Jasmine got in line and waited her turn. She kept looking at the envelope, making sure it was still zipped closed. Inside was $2,300. It represented countless hours of hard work, tired feet, and saying no to things her friends bought easily. This money was her future. When it was finally her turn, Jasmine walked up to the counter. By chance, she ended up at Jonathan's station. She smiled at him politely and said hello. Jonathan looked up from his computer and saw her. His eyes moved from her face to her clothes to the envelope in her hands. Something in his expression changed. His mouth became a thin line. "Can I help you?" he asked. His voice was flat and cold. "Yes, please," Jasmine said. Her voice was quiet and respectful. "I would like to open a savings account and deposit this money." She placed the envelope on the counter and unzipped it. Inside were neatly organized bills. She had sorted them by denomination and bundled them with rubber bands. She had been so careful with this money. Jonathan stared at the cash. Then he looked at Jasmine again. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Where did you get this money?" he asked. His tone was not friendly or curious. It was accusatory. Jasmine was confused by the question. "I saved it," she said. "I've been working and saving for college." "Working where?" Jonathan asked. He crossed his arms over his chest. "At Mario's restaurant downtown," Jasmine answered. "I wash dishes on weekends and sometimes after school." Jonathan made a sound that was almost like a laugh, but not a happy one. He did not believe her. He looked at the money again and then back at her. In his mind, he was making assumptions. He was judging her based on how she looked and how old she was. He decided that a teenage black girl could not possibly have earned this much money honestly. "I'm going to need to see multiple forms of identification," he said. He said it loudly enough that other customers in line could hear him. Jasmine reached into her pocket and pulled out her driver's permit. She slid it across the counter to Jonathan. He picked it up and examined it like he was looking for something wrong with it. "What else do you have?" he asked. "What do you mean?" Jasmine asked. She was starting to feel worried. "I need more identification. A school ID, a passport, something else." "I don't have my school ID with me," Jasmine said. "And I don't have a passport." "Is my permit not enough?" "I just want to open an account." Other customers in line were starting to pay attention. They could hear the conversation. Some of them were looking at Jasmine with curiosity. Others were looking at Jonathan with confusion. Why was he being so difficult with this young girl? Sarah, the other teller, glanced over at Jonathan's station. She saw what was happening and felt uncomfortable. This was not the first time she had seen Jonathan treat certain customers badly. But she was young and new at the bank. She did not know if she should say something. Jonathan leaned back in his chair and stared at Jasmine. "You're telling me you earned all this money washing dishes? That's a lot of cash for someone your age to be carrying around." Jasmine's heart began beating faster. She could feel her face getting hot. "Yes, sir. I saved it over 2 years. My mom told me to bring it to the bank today." "Where's your mother now?" Jonathan asked. "She's at work. She's a nurse at City Hospital." Jonathan did not seem to care about this information. He had already made up his mind about Jasmine. In his view, she was suspicious. The money was suspicious. Everything about the situation seemed wrong to him, though he could not explain exactly why. The truth was that his own prejudices were blinding him to the facts. The moment was about to get much worse, and neither Jonathan nor Jasmine had any idea that their lives were about to change forever. Jonathan pushed Jasmine's driver's permit back across the counter toward her. His face showed clear distrust. He did not care that other customers were watching now. In fact, he seemed to want an audience. It made him feel powerful. "I cannot process this transaction," he said loudly. "This situation looks suspicious to me." Jasmine felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. "Suspicious? I don't understand. What's suspicious about it? A teenage girl walking in here with over $2,000 in cash?" Jonathan said. He raised his eyebrows and looked around at the other customers, as if asking them to agree with him. "That doesn't happen every day. How do I know this money is really yours?" Jasmine's eyes started to fill with tears, but she fought to hold them back. She did not want to cry in front of all these strangers. "I told you I saved it. I worked hard for this money. Every single dollar." "So you say," Jonathan replied. He picked up the phone at his desk. "I think we need to get security involved here." "Security?" Jasmine's voice cracked. "Why do you need security?" "I'm just trying to open a bank account." An older woman standing in line spoke up. "Excuse me, why are you giving this young lady such a hard time?" "She's just trying to deposit money." Jonathan shot the woman an angry look. "Ma'am, please stay out of this. I'm doing my job. I have to protect this bank from potential fraud." "Fraud?" the woman said. "She's a child trying to open a savings account." But Jonathan ignored her. He was already speaking into the phone, calling for the security guard. His voice was calm and professional, but his words were damaging. "Yes, I need you at Station 3. I have a potential situation here." Jasmine felt her whole body start to shake. This was not supposed to happen. She was supposed to walk in, open an account, and leave. She was supposed to feel proud of herself for saving so much money. Instead, she felt humiliated and scared. A man in line pulled out his cell phone. He started recording video. He had watched the whole thing, and something about it felt very wrong to him. The way the bank employee was treating this young girl seemed unfair and harsh. Another customer, a young woman, also started recording on her phone. She whispered to her friend, "This is wrong. He's treating her like a criminal." The security guard arrived. He was an older black man named Robert, who had worked at the bank for 8 years. He walked up to Jonathan's station and looked at the situation. He saw Jasmine standing there with tears now streaming down her face. He saw the money on the counter. He saw Jonathan looking self-righteous and proud. "What's the problem here?" Robert asked quietly. He had a bad feeling about this. "This girl came in with a large amount of cash and wants to open an account," Jonathan said. "She has insufficient identification." and I believe the situation warrants investigation. The money could be stolen. Stolen? Jasmine cried out. It's not stolen. I earned it. Why won't you believe me? Robert looked at Jasmine gently. He could see she was genuinely upset and scared. He had a daughter about her age. Miss, can you tell me your name? Jasmine Williams, she said through her tears. And you've been saving this money? Robert asked kindly. Yes, sir. For 2 years. I work at Mario's restaurant on weekends. I want to go to college. My mom told me to put it in the bank where it would be safe. Jasmine was sobbing now. I didn't do anything wrong. Why is he treating me like this? Robert felt anger rising in his chest. He had seen Jonathan do things like this before. He had seen him be cold and suspicious with certain customers while being warm and helpful with others. Robert had always suspected Jonathan had prejudices, but this was the worst he had ever witnessed. Jonathan, Robert said carefully, does this young lady have an existing account here? Jonathan shrugged. I didn't check. Maybe you should check, Robert said. His voice had an edge to it now. Jonathan, annoyed, typed on his computer. His face changed slightly when he saw the results. There's a youth account under this name from 2018. So she's already a customer, Robert said. And she's had that account for years with no problems? That doesn't mean anything, Jonathan insisted. That account only has $47 in it. Now suddenly she has thousands? Something's not right. What's not right is how you're treating this child. The older woman in line said again. You should be ashamed of yourself. More customers were pulling out their phones now. At least 5 people were recording. They could all see what was happening. They could all hear Jonathan's accusations. They could all see Jasmine crying. Sarah, the other teller, finally found her courage. She walked over to Jonathan's station. Jonathan, maybe I should help with this transaction, she said quietly. I've got it handled, Jonathan snapped at her. It doesn't look handled, Sarah said. She was young, but she knew right from wrong. It looks like you're accusing a customer of a crime with no evidence. Stay in your lane, Sarah, Jonathan warned her. But Sarah did not back down. She looked at Jasmine with kindness. Honey, I believe you, and I think what's happening here is completely wrong. Jasmine looked at Sarah with grateful eyes. At least someone believed her. At least someone saw her as a human being and not a criminal. Jonathan's face turned red with anger. He did not like being challenged, especially not by a junior employee. I am following bank protocol. When a situation seems suspicious, we have the right to refuse service and investigate. But nothing about this is actually suspicious, Robert said. He was tired of watching this girl suffer. She's a customer. She has identification. She's explaining where the money came from. You're creating a problem where there isn't one. I know your type, Jonathan said, looking directly at Jasmine now. His voice was cold and mean. This money isn't really yours, is it? Tell me the truth. Where did you really get it? Those words hung in the air like poison. Several people in the bank gasped. The customers who were recording made sure they captured that moment on their phones. How dare you, the older woman in line said. How dare you speak to her that way? Jasmine could not take it anymore. She grabbed her envelope of money and her driver's permit. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped everything. You know what? I don't want to bank here. I'll go somewhere else. Somewhere where they don't treat people like criminals for no reason. Wait, Robert said gently. He wanted to fix this situation. Miss Williams, please don't leave. This is not how Sterling National Bank treats customers. This is not right. But Jasmine was already walking toward the door. She needed to get out of there. She needed to breathe. She needed to get away from Jonathan's cruel eyes and harsh words. As she pushed through the front door, she could hear the customers in line talking loudly. That was disgusting, one man said. I'm closing my account here, the older woman announced. I will not do business with a bank that allows employees to behave that way. Did everyone get that on video? Someone asked. I got it, multiple voices answered. Jonathan stood at his station, still believing he had done the right thing. He truly thought he was protecting the bank. He could not see that what he had actually done was reveal his own ugly prejudices to a room full of witnesses. He could not see that those cell phone videos were about to change his life forever. Sarah watched Jasmine leave and felt sick to her stomach. She knew she should have done more. She should have stopped this sooner. Robert shook his head in disgust. He walked back to his security post, already planning to write a report about what he had just witnessed. Outside, Jasmine sat on a bench and cried. She held her envelope of money close to her chest. 2 years of hard work, 2 years of dreams, and she had been treated like a thief. She pulled out her phone and called her mother with shaking hands. "Mom," she said when her mother answered, "something terrible just happened." Inside the bank, customers were already uploading their videos to social media. They were typing angry captions. They were tagging the bank's official accounts. They were using hashtags like justice and discrimination and shame. The videos began to spread fast. The first video went online at 11:47 in the morning. A customer named David posted it to his social media account with a simple caption, "You won't believe what I just witnessed at Sterling National Bank. This is absolutely disgusting." David had filmed the entire confrontation from start to finish. His video was clear and the audio was good. You could hear every word Jonathan said. You could see the tears on Jasmine's face. You could feel the tension in the room. Within 15 minutes, David's video had 100 shares. Within 30 minutes, it had 1,000. People who saw it were shocked and angry. They shared it with their friends and family. They tagged news stations and civil rights organizations. They demanded that something be done. At 12:03, another angle of the same incident appeared online. This video came from the older woman who had stood up for Jasmine. Her name was Margaret, and she was a retired teacher. She had watched the whole thing with growing horror, and she wanted the world to see what she had seen. Margaret's caption was longer and more detailed. She wrote, "I am 67 years old, and I have never seen such blatant discrimination in my life. This bank employee humiliated a young girl who was simply trying to deposit her college savings. He accused her of stealing with absolutely no evidence. This is racism, plain and simple. Sterling National Bank needs to fire this man immediately. I am closing my account tomorrow." Margaret's video also began spreading rapidly. People who saw both videos realized they were seeing the same incident from different angles. This made the story even more credible and powerful. No one could claim the videos were edited or fake when multiple people had recorded the same thing. By 12:30, a third video appeared. This one was from a young woman named Ashley, who had been waiting in line with her friend. Ashley's video focused on the moment when Jonathan said, "I know your type. This money isn't really yours, is it?" She had zoomed in on his face when he said those words. You could see the contempt in his expression. You could hear the cruelty in his voice. Ashley's caption was short but effective. This bank employee literally profiled a teenage girl in front of everyone. Unacceptable. Justice for Jasmine. That was the first time someone used the hashtag Justice for Jasmine. Within an hour, it was trending in the local area. Within 2 hours, it was trending across the entire state. People who saw the videos felt a range of strong emotions. Some were angry. Some were sad. Many were not surprised because they had experienced similar treatment themselves. They shared their own stories in the comments under the videos. "This happened to me at a department store," one woman wrote. "I was followed around by security for 20 minutes just because of how I looked. My son was treated this way at a car dealership," another person commented. "The salesman assumed he couldn't afford anything and was rude to him. This is why we need to record everything," someone else added. Without these videos, no one would believe this happened. The videos reached a local news reporter named Jennifer Chen at 1:15 in the afternoon. Jennifer worked for Channel 7 News, and she was always looking for important stories that mattered to the community. When she watched the videos, she knew immediately that this was big. Jennifer called her producer. "I need a camera crew, now. We need to get to Sterling National Bank and we need to find this girl and her family." By 2:00, Jennifer and her camera crew were outside the bank, filming a news segment. She interviewed several customers who had been there during the incident. All of them confirmed what the videos showed. "It was horrible to watch," Margaret told the camera. "That poor child was just trying to do the right thing by putting her money in the bank. And that employee treated her like a criminal. I have banked at Sterling for 30 years, but after today I'm done." Jennifer also tried to interview Jonathan, but the bank manager would not allow it. The manager, a nervous man named Thomas, stood at the door and said, "No comment. We are looking into the matter internally." But no comment was not good enough for the people watching this story unfold. They wanted answers. They wanted accountability. They wanted justice. By 3 in the afternoon, Sterling National Bank's main phone lines were overloaded. Hundreds of people were calling to complain. The bank's social media accounts were flooded with angry messages. People were posting the videos directly on the bank's pages and demanding a response. "Fire that employee now," one message said. "I'm closing all my accounts with your bank." Another threatened. "You should be ashamed," wrote another angry customer. "This is 2025 and you still allow this kind of discrimination?" The bank's corporate office, located 2 hours away in the state capital, started receiving calls around 3:30. The corporate communications team was in a panic. They had no idea this incident had happened. The branch manager, Thomas, had not reported it to them yet. They were finding out about it the same way everyone else was, through social media. At 4:00 Channel 7 News aired Jennifer Chen's report during their afternoon broadcast. Millions of people watched. The story showed the videos, interviewed witnesses, and showed Jennifer standing outside Sterling National Bank asking questions that no one from the bank would answer. More news stations picked up the story. By 5 it was on Channel 3, Channel 9, and Channel 12. By 6 national news websites were writing articles about it. The story was spreading beyond the local community. People across the country were seeing the videos and reading about what happened to Jasmine. Online, the hashtag Justice for Jasmine was exploding. It had been used over 50,000 times by early evening. People were not just sharing the videos anymore. They were creating graphics and writing long posts about discrimination in banking and retail. They were organizing. They were demanding change, a civil rights organization called the Community Justice Alliance issued a statement at 6:30. "We are deeply disturbed by the videos showing a Sterling National Bank employee racially profiling and humiliating a young black customer. This is exactly the kind of discrimination we have been fighting against for decades. We call on Sterling National Bank to take immediate action, including firing the employee involved and implementing better training for all staff. We also offer our full support to Jasmine Williams and her family." Meanwhile, Jasmine was at home with her mother, Diana. Diana had left work early when Jasmine called her crying. She held her daughter and listened to the whole story. Diana was a nurse who had worked hard her entire life. She had raised Jasmine alone after Jasmine's father died when she was little. She had taught Jasmine about dignity, hard work, and honesty. And now her daughter had been treated like a criminal for following those exact values. Diana was angry. She was hurt. But most of all, she was determined to make sure her daughter's pain meant something. When a reporter called asking for an interview, Diana agreed. At 8 that evening, Channel 7 News aired a special segment. Jennifer Chen sat in Diana's living room with Diana and Jasmine. Jasmine, still puffy-eyed from crying, told her story in her own words. "I saved that money for 2 years, Jasmine said quietly, looking at the camera. "Every weekend I worked at the restaurant. My feet would hurt and I would be so tired. But I kept going because I want to go to college. I want to be a nurse like my mom. I want to help people. And today, I tried to do the responsible thing by putting my money in the bank. But instead of helping me, that man treated me like I was a thief. He made me feel like I was nothing." Diana held her daughter's hand and spoke with controlled anger. "My daughter is a good girl. She works hard. She gets good grades. She has never been in any kind of trouble. And today she was humiliated in public simply because of the color of her skin. This is not acceptable. Sterling National Bank needs to answer for what happened. That employee needs to be held accountable." The interview was powerful. Viewers watching at home felt connected to Jasmine and Diana. They saw real people who had been hurt by discrimination. The story was no longer just about angry videos online. It was personal. By 10 that night, the story had gone fully viral. The videos had been viewed millions of times. The hashtag Justice for Jasmine was trending nationally. News outlets across the country were covering the story. Sterling National Bank's stock price had dropped 2% in after-hours trading as investors worried about the damage to the company's reputation. And through all of this, Jonathan Reed had no idea what was happening. He had finished his shift at 5 and gone home. He did not use social media much. He had not watched the news. He ate dinner with his wife, complained about his day at work, and went to bed at his usual time. He had no idea that his face was on screens across the country. He had no idea that millions of people knew his name and where he worked. He had no idea that his life was about to fall apart. The storm was coming for him. And when he woke up the next morning, nothing would ever be the same again. Wednesday morning began with chaos at Sterling National Bank's corporate headquarters. Patricia Coleman, the regional director, arrived at her office at 6:30 to find 37 voicemail messages waiting for her. Her email inbox had over 200 unread messages. All of them were about the same thing: the incident at the downtown branch. Patricia was a black woman who had worked her way up through the banking industry over 25 years. She had faced discrimination herself many times in her career. When she watched the videos of what happened to Jasmine, she felt sick. This was exactly the kind of behavior she had spent years trying to eliminate from the industry. She called an emergency meeting with the bank's executive team for 7 a.m. The CEO, the head of human resources, the legal counsel, and the communications director all gathered in the conference room. Patricia played the videos for them on the large screen. The room was silent as they watched. When the videos ended, the CEO spoke first. His name was Robert Harrison, and he looked pale and stressed. "This is a disaster. How did this happen? Why didn't the branch manager report this to us immediately?" "Because he probably didn't think it was a big deal," Patricia said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "That's part of the problem. We have a culture where incidents like this get brushed under the rug." The head of human resources, a woman named Linda, was taking notes frantically. "Do we have any previous complaints about this employee? What's his record?" "That's what I need to find out," Patricia said. "I'm driving to the branch this morning to conduct a full investigation. But based on what I can see in these videos, this employee violated multiple policies and engaged in clear discriminatory behavior." The legal counsel, James, looked worried. "We need to be very careful about how we handle this. The family could sue us. Other customers could join a class action lawsuit. We need to contain this quickly." The communications director, Michelle, was already typing on her laptop. "We need to issue a statement. The media is all over this. Our social media accounts are being destroyed. We're losing customers by the hour. Draft a statement," the CEO ordered. "But do not release it until Patricia completes her investigation. We need facts first." "Patricia, how soon can you get to the branch?" "I'm leaving now," Patricia said, standing up. "I'll call you with updates." Patricia drove to the downtown branch, her mind racing. She had built her career on principles of fairness and equality. This incident felt like a personal failure, even though she had not been there when it happened. When she arrived at the branch at 8:45, she saw something that made her heart sink even further. There were protesters outside. About 20 people held signs with messages like, "Justice for Jasmine," "Banking while black is not a crime," and "Fire racist employees." A local pastor named Reverend Marcus Thompson was leading the group in chants. "What do we want? Justice." "When do we want it? Now." Patricia walked past the protesters with her head held high. She knew they had every right to be angry. Inside the bank, she found the branch manager, Thomas, looking like he had not slept all night. "Ms. Coleman, thank God you're here," Thomas said. "This has been a nightmare. We've had protesters since we opened. The phones haven't stopped ringing. Several customers have closed their accounts already this morning." "Where is the employee?" "Jonathan Reed?" Patricia asked. "He's here. He came in for his regular shift. He seems confused about why everyone is so upset." Patricia's jaw tightened. "Bring him to the conference room. And I need you to pull all security footage from yesterday between 10:30 and noon. I also need his complete personnel file, including any previous complaints or incidents." "Right away," Thomas said, hurrying off. While she waited, Patricia walked through the branch. She spoke quietly with other employees. Sarah, the young teller who had tried to help Jasmine, broke down crying when Patricia asked her about the incident. "It was so wrong," Sarah said through her tears. "I've seen Jonathan be rude to customers before, but never like that. Never so openly cruel. I tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. I should have done more. I should have called a manager." "You stood up for what was right," Patricia told her gently. "That took courage. Can you tell me about other times you've seen Jonathan treat customers badly?" Sarah wiped her eyes and nodded. "He's always been harder on certain customers. Usually people of color, or people who look poor, or people who don't speak perfect English. He questions them more, asks for extra ID, sometimes refuses service for reasons that seem like excuses. Other customers get treated completely differently. I've mentioned it to Thomas before, but nothing ever changed." Patricia made notes. This was important information. It showed a pattern of behavior, not just a single incident. Robert, the security guard, also spoke with Patricia. He was direct and honest. I've worked here 8 years. Jonathan has always had an attitude problem. He thinks he's better than everyone else. Yesterday was the worst I've ever seen, but it didn't surprise me. That man has prejudices and he doesn't even try to hide them. Did you ever file a formal complaint about his behavior? Patricia asked. Robert shook his head. I mentioned things to Thomas a few times, but nothing formal. I guess I didn't think anyone would listen. I'm just a security guard. Your observations matter, Patricia assured him. Thank you for being honest. Finally, Jonathan was brought to the conference room. He walked in looking annoyed and inconvenienced, not worried or remorseful. He sat down across from Patricia and crossed his arms. I don't understand what all the fuss is about, Jonathan said. I was doing my job. That girl came in with a suspicious amount of cash and insufficient identification. I had every right to question her. Patricia opened her laptop and turned it toward Jonathan. Watch this, she said, playing the first video. As Jonathan watched himself on screen, his expression slowly changed. He saw how he looked to others. He heard his own words. For the first time, a flicker of concern crossed his face. These videos have been viewed millions of times, Patricia said quietly when the video ended. Millions of people across the country have watched you humiliate a 17-year-old girl. They heard you say, I know your type. They saw you call security on a customer who had done nothing wrong. They watched you treat her like a criminal. I was just being thorough, Jonathan stammered. We have procedures. Let me tell you what procedures say, Patricia interrupted, her voice sharp. Procedures say we treat every customer with respect. Procedures say we do not make assumptions based on appearance. Procedures say we accept standard forms of identification. That girl had a driver's permit and an existing account with this bank, an account she's had since she was 13 years old. Did you even bother to check? Jonathan's face went pale. There was an existing account? Yes, which you would have known if you had bothered to look before accusing her of fraud. Patricia pulled up more documents on her laptop. I've been reviewing your employment file, Jonathan. Do you know what I found? 6 informal complaints from customers in the past 3 years. 5 of them were from people of color. They all described similar behavior: excessive scrutiny, rudeness, unjustified suspicion. Those were all misunderstandings, Jonathan said quickly. People get offended so easily these days. I treat everyone the same. The videos prove that's not true, Patricia said. I also spoke with your coworkers this morning. Multiple employees confirmed that they've witnessed you treating certain customers differently based on their appearance. Jonathan's hands were shaking now. What are you saying? I'm saying that you engaged in discriminatory behavior. You violated our customer service policies. You violated our code of conduct. You humiliated a teenage girl in front of a room full of people, and worst of all, you showed no recognition that what you did was wrong. People are overreacting, Jonathan insisted. This is being blown out of proportion because of social media. In a week, everyone will forget about it. Patricia closed her laptop and looked Jonathan directly in the eyes. The bank's stock price dropped 2% yesterday because of your actions. We've received thousands of complaints. We have protesters outside right now. Major news outlets are covering this story. The Community Justice Alliance has issued a statement demanding your termination. This is not going away. For the first time, Jonathan seemed to realize the seriousness of the situation. What happens now? Now we finish the investigation, Patricia said. I'm interviewing every employee who was present yesterday. I'm reviewing all the security footage. I'm documenting everything. Then I'm making a recommendation to the executive team. I've worked here for 15 years, Jonathan said, and his voice cracked slightly. I've never been late. I've never stolen anything. My cash drawer always balances perfectly. Being good at counting money doesn't excuse racism, Patricia said bluntly. You can be efficient and discriminatory at the same time. In fact, that makes it worse because you should have known better. Jonathan stood up, his legs unsteady. Can I go back to work? No. You're suspended pending the completion of this investigation. Go home. We'll contact you when we've made a decision. After Jonathan left, Patricia spent the rest of the morning interviewing every employee who had been working yesterday. She reviewed 4 different angles of security camera footage. She read through Jonathan's entire employment history. She documented every complaint, every incident, every red flag that had been ignored or dismissed over the years. By lunchtime, she had a clear picture. This was not an isolated incident. This was a pattern of discriminatory behavior that had been allowed to continue for years because no one in management had taken it seriously enough to stop. Patricia called the CEO. "I have my findings," she told him. "We need to schedule a meeting with HR and legal immediately. And we need to contact the Williams family. We owe them a personal apology." Outside, the protesters continued their chants. News cameras filmed them from across the street. And across the country, people waited to see what Sterling National Bank would do next. Would they stand up for what was right? Or would they try to protect their employee and hope the story died down? The investigation was complete. Now came the hard part: consequences and accountability. Thursday morning, Jonathan Reed woke up to a phone call from Sterling National Bank's Human Resources Department. The voice on the other end was formal and cold. "Mr. Reed, this is Linda Morrison from Corporate HR. We need you to come to the regional office today at 2 p.m. for a meeting regarding your employment status." Jonathan's stomach dropped. He had barely slept the past 2 nights. After Patricia sent him home on Wednesday, he had finally looked at social media. He had seen the videos. He had read the comments. Thousands of people calling him racist, demanding he be fired, saying terrible things about him. His hands had shaken so badly he could barely hold his phone. "What is this meeting about?" Jonathan asked, though he already knew. "We'll discuss everything at the meeting," Linda said. "Please arrive 15 minutes early. Bring any personal items from your workspace if you haven't already removed them." The line went dead. Jonathan sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall. His wife, Karen, stood in the doorway. She had been furious with him since Tuesday night when the videos started spreading. They had barely spoken. "Was that the bank?" Karen asked. Jonathan nodded. "They want me to come in for a meeting." "They're going to fire you," Karen said flatly. "You know that, right?" "I was doing my job," Jonathan said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "I was following procedures." "Jonathan, I watched those videos," Karen said. Her voice was tired and disappointed. "Everyone has watched those videos. The way you spoke to that girl, I didn't even recognize you. Or maybe I did recognize you, and that's what scares me." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've heard you make comments before. About certain people, about certain neighborhoods. I ignored it because I didn't want to believe my husband had those attitudes. But now the whole world can see what I refused to see." Jonathan had no response. Karen turned and walked away. He heard her in the kitchen angrily washing dishes. At 1:45 p.m., Jonathan drove to the regional office. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. He had put on his best suit, as if looking professional might somehow save him. As he pulled into the parking lot, he noticed his hands were sweating. Inside the building, a receptionist directed him to a conference room on the 3rd floor. When he entered, he saw 4 people waiting for him: Patricia Coleman, Linda Morrison from HR, James Chen, the legal counsel, and a woman he didn't recognize who introduced herself as a representative from the bank's ethics compliance department. "Please sit down, Mr. Reed," Patricia said, gesturing to a chair on one side of the long conference table. The 4 of them sat on the other side, forming a wall of authority across from him. Linda opened a folder and pulled out several documents. "Mr. Reed, we've completed our investigation into the incident that occurred on Tuesday at the downtown branch. We've reviewed security footage, interviewed witnesses, examined your employment history, and analyzed your conduct in relation to bank policies and procedures." Jonathan wanted to interrupt to defend himself, but something about the formal tone of her voice stopped him. "Let me be very clear about what we found," Patricia said, taking over. "You violated multiple bank policies. You accused a customer of potential fraud with no legitimate basis. You failed to verify information that was readily available in our system. You treated a minor customer with hostility and disrespect. And most seriously, you engaged in what we believe to be discriminatory behavior based on race." "I didn't," Jonathan started to say. "Let me finish," Patricia said firmly. "We also discovered a pattern of similar behavior. 6 previous customer complaints, multiple reports from your coworkers about how you treat certain customers differently, and a consistent record of treating customers of color with more suspicion and less courtesy than white customers." The ethics compliance representative spoke next. "Mr. Reed, discrimination in any form is a violation of our core company values. Sterling National Bank has a zero-tolerance policy for racist behavior. What happened on Tuesday was not just a mistake or a bad day. It was a clear demonstration of bias that has been present in your conduct for years. Jonathan felt like the walls were closing in. I've worked here for 15 years. I've never been late. I've never had any major problems. This is all because of social media. People just want someone to blame. James, the legal counsel, shook his head. Mr. Reed, this is not about social media. This is about your actions. The video simply documented what you did. They didn't create the problem. They revealed it. That girl came in with suspicious circumstances, Jonathan said, his voice rising. I had a right to question her. She had an account at our bank since she was 13 years old, Patricia said, her patience wearing thin. She had valid identification. She gave you a reasonable explanation for her savings, but you didn't care about any of that, did you? You made a judgment about her based on how she looked, and you treated her accordingly. I was trying to protect the bank. From what? Patricia demanded. From a teenage girl trying to deposit her college savings? Who were you really protecting, Jonathan? Or were you acting on your own prejudices? Jonathan opened his mouth, but no words came out. He could feel his career slipping away. Linda pulled out another document. Mr. Reed, after careful consideration and consultation with our executive team, we have made a decision. Effective immediately, your employment with Sterling National Bank is terminated. The words hit Jonathan like a physical blow. You're firing me? Yes, Linda said. For cause. This termination is based on violation of company policy, discrimination, and conduct that has damaged the reputation of the bank. You can't do this, Jonathan said desperately. I'll fight this. I'll sue you for wrongful termination. James, the lawyer, spoke calmly. Mr. Reed, you signed our code of conduct when you were hired. You agreed to follow all anti-discrimination policies. You have violated those agreements repeatedly. We have extensive documentation, video evidence, and multiple witness statements. If you choose to pursue legal action, I can assure you that we will vigorously defend this termination. Jonathan felt panic rising in his chest. What about my pension? My benefits? You'll receive information about your final paycheck and any benefits you're entitled to under the law, Linda said. But I must inform you that because this is a termination for cause, you will not receive any severance package. You will also not be eligible for rehire at any Sterling National Bank location. This is insane, Jonathan said, his voice breaking. This is all because people are too sensitive these days. Everything is about race now. You can't say anything or do anything without someone getting offended. Patricia leaned forward, her eyes hard. Mr. Reed, listen to me very carefully. This is not about political correctness or sensitivity. This is about basic human decency. You humiliated a child. You made her cry. You made her feel like a criminal when she had done nothing wrong, and you did it because of her skin color. That's not being too sensitive. That's called being a decent human being. I want to speak to the CEO, Jonathan demanded. The CEO has reviewed this case personally, Linda said. He approved this decision. There is no appeal process for terminations involving discrimination. A security guard Jonathan didn't recognize appeared at the conference room door. Patricia nodded to him. Security will escort you to collect any personal items from your locker, and then escort you from the building. You are no longer permitted on any Sterling National Bank property. This is humiliating, Jonathan said, standing up shakily. Yes, Patricia agreed. It is humiliating. Now you know how Jasmine Williams felt on Tuesday. Jonathan followed the security guard out of the conference room. His mind was racing. This couldn't be happening. 15 years of his life gone. His career destroyed. His reputation ruined. As he walked through the building, other employees stopped what they were doing and watched him. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked away. Everyone knew why he was there. Everyone had seen the videos. At his locker, he grabbed a few personal items and some photos, a coffee mug, a jacket. The security guard stood close by, watching to make sure he didn't take anything that belonged to the bank. They walked to the parking lot in silence. The guard watched as Jonathan got in his car. As Jonathan pulled out of the parking lot for the last time, he saw the guard taking a photo of his license plate. They were making sure he didn't come back. Jonathan drove aimlessly for an hour, not wanting to go home and face his wife. He finally parked at a gas station and just sat there. He pulled out his phone and made a terrible mistake. He looked at social media again. People were celebrating. The hashtag Justice for Jasmine was filled with posts about his firing. Breaking. Racist bank employee fired after video goes viral. Sterling National Bank fires employee who humiliated black teen. Justice served. Man loses job after discriminating against young customer. The comments were brutal. People were glad he was fired. They were calling for more consequences. Some had found his personal social media accounts and were leaving angry messages. A few people had posted his home address. Jonathan's phone rang. It was his brother. He answered. "Jonathan, what the hell is going on?" His brother asked. "I just saw on the news that you got fired. People are calling you a racist." "What happened?" "It's all a misunderstanding," Jonathan said weakly. "Social media is destroying me over nothing. I watched the videos, Jonathan. That didn't look like nothing. You too?" Jonathan felt betrayed. "You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side. I'm your brother. But I'm also telling you the truth. What you did was wrong. The way you spoke to that girl was wrong." Jonathan hung up. He couldn't handle this. He sat in his car at the gas station and felt his entire life falling apart. No job, his wife angry at him, his family questioning him, the whole world hating him. He had woken up on Tuesday as a respected senior bank teller. Now 3 days later, he was unemployed, publicly shamed and facing an uncertain future. And the worst part? Deep down in a place he didn't want to examine, he still didn't fully understand why everyone thought what he did was so wrong. That night, Sterling National Bank issued a public statement. After a thorough investigation, Sterling National Bank has terminated the employee involved in Tuesday's incident. We do not tolerate discrimination of any kind. We have reached out to Ms. Williams and her family to offer our sincere apologies. We are also implementing immediate changes to our training programs and customer service policies. The statement was shared thousands of times. Some people praised the bank for taking action. Others said it wasn't enough, that the bank should have addressed Jonathan's behavior years ago. But for Jonathan Reed, sitting in his dark living room that night, all that mattered was that his life as he knew it was over. 3 weeks after the incident, the world had moved on to other news stories. But for the people directly involved, life had changed in permanent and profound ways. For Sterling National Bank, the damage control was extensive and expensive. The bank hired a diversity and inclusion consultant to review all their policies and procedures. They brought in trainers to conduct mandatory bias training for every single employee at every branch. The training took 2 full days and covered topics like implicit bias, microaggressions, and cultural sensitivity. Patricia Coleman led many of these training sessions herself. She shared her own experiences with discrimination in the banking industry. She explained to employees why what happened to Jasmine was so harmful. Some employees were receptive and engaged. Others seemed resentful, feeling like they were being punished for one person's mistakes. The bank also implemented new policies. Now any customer complaint involving potential discrimination had to be immediately reported to corporate headquarters. Every employee had to take an annual diversity training refresher. Secret shoppers of different races and backgrounds would visit branches randomly to test whether customers were being treated equally. Sterling National Bank created a scholarship fund in Jasmine's name. They pledged $100,000 over 5 years to help minority students pursue higher education. It was a genuine gesture, but also a public relations move. The bank needed to rebuild its image. The downtown branch where the incident occurred lost 12% of its customers in the month following the incident. Some people closed their accounts in protest. Others simply felt uncomfortable banking there after what happened. The bank spent thousands of dollars on advertising trying to win back customer trust. Sarah, the young teller who had tried to help Jasmine, received a promotion. Patricia recognized that Sarah had shown moral courage when others stayed silent. She was moved to a new branch and given additional training to become an assistant manager. Sarah took the job seriously and made it her mission to create a welcoming environment for all customers. Robert, the security guard, was also recognized for his honesty during the investigation. He received a raise and a formal commendation for his years of service. He continued working at the downtown branch, but the incident had changed him. He was more watchful now, more willing to speak up when he saw something wrong. Thomas, the branch manager who had failed to report the incident or address Jonathan's behavior over the years, was quietly reassigned to a smaller branch in a suburban area. It was not technically a demotion, but everyone understood it was a punishment. He had been in a position of authority and had failed to use it properly. The bank's stock price recovered within a month. though it took longer for the company's reputation to fully heal. They became known in the industry as an example of what could go wrong when discrimination was ignored, but also as a company that took swift action to correct its mistakes. For Jasmine and her mother, Diana, life had become complicated in unexpected ways. The attention was overwhelming at first. News reporters wanted interviews. Civil rights organizations wanted them to speak at events. People recognized them on the street. Diana had to take time off from work to deal with everything. She met with the bank's executives and accepted their apology, though she made it clear that actions mattered more than words. She worked with them on the scholarship fund, making sure it would truly help students who needed it. Jasmine struggled emotionally in the weeks after the incident. She had nightmares about being in the bank, about Jonathan's cruel eyes and harsh voice. She felt anxious in public places, worried that people were judging her. Her mother took her to see a therapist who specialized in trauma, but slowly something positive emerged from the pain. Jasmine realized that her story had touched people. She received hundreds of letters and messages from people who had experienced similar discrimination. Many were from other young people who told her she was brave. Some were from older adults who shared their own stories of being profiled or mistreated. One letter came from an elderly black man who wrote, "I am 78 years old. When I was your age, what happened to you happened to me and my friends every single day. We couldn't eat at certain restaurants. We couldn't use certain water fountains. Banks like Sterling wouldn't even let us open accounts at all. What happened to you was wrong. But the fact that people cared, that the bank took action, that shows how far we've come. Keep your head up, young lady. You're part of the change." That letter made Jasmine cry, but in a different way than she had cried in the bank. These were tears of connection and purpose. With her mother's support, Jasmine decided to speak publicly about her experience. She gave an interview to a local podcast that focused on youth issues. She spoke at her high school assembly about discrimination and dignity. She wrote an essay for a national magazine about what it felt like to be profiled as a teenager. Jasmine's writing was thoughtful and mature. She didn't just talk about her pain. She talked about systematic problems in how businesses treat people of color. She talked about the importance of recording injustice. She talked about how allies like Sarah and the customers who stood up for her made a difference. The essay went viral in its own right. A literary agent reached out to Jasmine and suggested she write a book about her experience and about financial literacy for young people. Jasmine was excited but also cautious. She didn't want to be defined forever by the worst day of her life. The scholarship fund Sterling National Bank created in her name grew beyond their initial commitment. Other companies and individuals donated to it. By the end of the year, the fund had over $300,000. Jasmine was invited to be on the selection committee that chose which students would receive scholarships. She took the role seriously, reviewing applications and advocating for students who reminded her of herself. Jasmine did eventually open a savings account at a different bank. The experience was completely different. The teller was kind and congratulatory. "College savings? That's wonderful," the woman said warmly. "You should be very proud of yourself." Such simple words, but they meant everything to Jasmine. She continued working at Mario's restaurant on weekends. Her boss, Mr. Romano, had been incredibly supportive during everything. He gave her extra time off when she needed it. He told everyone who would listen that Jasmine was the hardest worker he had ever employed. When Jasmine received her acceptance letter to nursing school at State University, she cried happy tears. She called her mother at work to tell her the news. Diana left the hospital during her lunch break and drove to the restaurant where Jasmine was working. Mother and daughter hugged in the parking lot, both crying and laughing. "You did it, baby," Diana whispered. "I'm so proud of you." "We did it, Mom," Jasmine corrected her. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." That fall, Jasmine enrolled in college. She declared a major in nursing with a minor in social justice. She joined the campus diversity committee and the student union. She continued to speak occasionally about her experience, but she also focused on being a normal college student, studying, making friends, figuring out who she wanted to be. People occasionally recognized her on campus. "Hey, aren't you the girl from that bank video?" Most of them were supportive. A few made ignorant comments or claimed she had overreacted. Jasmine learned to handle both reactions with grace. She started a blog called Banking on Dignity, where she wrote about financial literacy, particularly for young people of color and low-income families. She explained how to open accounts, build credit, avoid predatory loans, and save for the future. She made complicated financial concepts accessible and relevant. The blog grew popular. High schools started using some of her posts as teaching materials in their economics classes. A financial literacy nonprofit asked her to join their youth advisory board. Jasmine also became an advocate for recording rights. She spoke about the importance of citizens filming interactions with authority figures and businesses. "If those customers hadn't recorded what happened to me, no one would have believed me," she told audiences. "Their videos gave me proof. They gave me power. They gave me justice." The Community Justice Alliance, the civil rights organization that had supported her family, invited Jasmine to speak at their annual gala. She stood at a podium in front of hundreds of people and told her story. But she didn't just talk about what happened to her. She talked about the thousands of people who experience discrimination every day, but didn't have videos to prove it. She talked about systematic change. She talked about hope. "What happened to me was painful," Jasmine said to the audience. "It was humiliating and wrong. But it also taught me something important. It taught me that ordinary people have power." The customers who recorded that video, the teller who tried to help me, the protesters who showed up, the people who shared my story, they all used their power to demand justice. And it worked. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Diana sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, proud of the young woman her daughter had become. By the end of the year, multiple things had changed because of Jasmine's experience. Sterling National Bank had reformed its practices. Other banks had reviewed their own policies after seeing what happened. Training programs for customer service employees across the industry began, including segments about unconscious. A state legislator even introduced a bill called Jasmine's Law that would require mandatory discrimination training for all bank employees in the state. The bill faced opposition from some business groups who said it was government overreach, but it sparked important conversations about accountability in financial services. Jasmine's story became a case study in business schools and diversity training programs. Students analyzed what went wrong and what the bank did right in its response. The incident was painful, but it led to real change. And through it all, Jasmine kept her envelope of money. It sat on her desk in her dorm room, empty now since the cash had long been deposited. But she kept it as a reminder of where she had been and how far she had come. She had walked into that bank as a scared teenager. She had walked out humiliated and hurt. But she had transformed that pain into purpose. The aftermath of that terrible day had created something beautiful. Justice, awareness, change, and the beginning of a young woman's journey to make the world a little bit better. 6 months after the incident, life had settled into new patterns for everyone involved. Some people had grown from their experiences. Others were still struggling to understand what had happened and why. Jasmine Williams was thriving at State University. It was November, and she had just finished her first semester of nursing classes. She had earned straight A's in all her courses. Her professors praised her dedication and compassion. On weekends, she volunteered at a free health clinic in a low-income neighborhood, getting hands-on experience and giving back to her community. Her blog, Banking on Dignity, now had over 50,000 followers. She posted twice a week about financial literacy, social justice, and her college experiences. She had partnered with 3 nonprofit organizations to create free educational resources for teenagers about money management. Her content was being shared in schools across the state. Jasmine had also been invited to speak at a national banking conference in Chicago. Standing in front of hundreds of banking executives and managers, she told her story with confidence and grace. She challenged the audience to examine their own biases and to create systems that treated every customer with dignity. The day I walked into Sterling National Bank, I was just a girl trying to do the right thing, Jasmine told the conference attendees. I had worked hard, saved diligently, and followed all the rules. But to one employee, I was suspicious simply because of how I looked. That should never happen to anyone ever again. You have the power to make sure it doesn't. The speech received a standing ovation. Several banking executives approached her afterward to discuss implementing changes at their own institutions. Jasmine handed out her contact information and encouraged them to follow through on their promises. The scholarship fund created in her name had already helped 15 students pay for college. Jasmine read every application personally and often reached out to the recipients to offer mentorship and support. She understood what it felt like to need help. and she was determined to pay forward the support she had received. Diana Williams was incredibly proud of her daughter. She had watched Jasmine transform pain into purpose. Diana had returned to her work as a nurse, but the experience had changed her too. She was more vocal now about injustice. She spoke up when she saw discrimination at the hospital. She joined the diversity committee at work. She had found her own voice through supporting her daughter. Mother and daughter talked every few days on the phone. Jasmine would share stories about her classes and her blog. Diana would share updates about her work and about people in their neighborhood who asked about Jasmine. Their bond had always been strong, but the experience had made it even stronger. Sterling National Bank had undergone significant changes. Patricia Coleman had been promoted to Senior Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion for the entire company. She traveled to different branches conducting training sessions and reviewing policies. She had brought in advisors from the NAACP and other civil rights organizations to help reshape the company culture. The mandatory diversity training had been completed at every branch. While some employees had initially been resistant, many had gained valuable insights. Several employees privately thanked Patricia for the training, admitting they had learned things about their own unconscious biases that they had never considered before. The bank's reputation was slowly recovering. Customer satisfaction scores were improving. The downtown branch where the incident occurred had hired new staff and created a community advisory board that met monthly to discuss how the bank could better serve the neighborhood. Sarah had excelled in her new role as assistant manager at a different branch. She made it a point to greet every customer warmly and to train her staff to do the same. She often thought about Jasmine and hoped she was doing well. When Sarah saw the news about Jasmine speaking at the banking conference, she smiled. She was proud to have stood up for what was right that day. Robert, the security guard, was still working at the downtown branch. He had become something of a local hero in the community after his honest testimony during the investigation. People respected that he had told the truth even though Jonathan had been his co-worker. Robert used his position to create a welcoming atmosphere. He learned the names of regular customers. He helped elderly people to their cars. He made sure everyone who walked through the door felt safe and valued. As for Jonathan Reed, his life had taken a very different path. Finding a new job had been nearly impossible. Every time he applied for a position in banking or finance, a quick internet search by potential employers revealed the videos and news articles. No one wanted to hire someone with his reputation. He had applied to over 60 jobs in 6 months. Most applications were simply ignored. A few led to interviews, but they always ended the same way. "We've decided to go in a different direction." Jonathan knew what that meant. They had found out who he was. His wife, Karen, had asked for a separation in September. She told Jonathan she needed space to think about their marriage. The truth was that she was embarrassed to be associated with him. Her friends had seen the videos. People at her workplace had asked her about it. She couldn't defend what he had done, and she was tired of trying. "I feel like I don't even know you anymore," Karen had told him when she moved out. "Or maybe I'm finally seeing who you really were all along." Jonathan was now living alone in their small house. Karen had taken the dog with her, and the silence was oppressive. He spent most of his time applying for jobs, watching television, and feeling sorry for himself. He had been forced to take a job at a warehouse loading trucks. The pay was less than half of what he had earned at the bank. The work was physically demanding. His co-workers were younger and didn't talk to him much. He was just another middle-aged guy trying to get by. Jonathan was bitter about everything that had happened. He blamed social media for destroying his life. He blamed the customers who had recorded him. He blamed the bank for not standing by him. He blamed Jasmine for making such a big deal out of nothing. He blamed everyone except himself. He had been required by the state unemployment office to attend sensitivity training as a condition of receiving benefits. The training consisted of 6 weeks of classes about discrimination, bias, and diversity. Jonathan attended because he had to, but he didn't really listen. He sat in the back of the room, arms crossed, waiting for it to be over. But something happened during the last class that broke through his defenses, just a little. The instructor, an older black man named William, told his own story. He talked about growing up in the 1960s during segregation. He described being denied service at restaurants, being called terrible names, being followed by police for no reason, being judged constantly based on his skin color, "I'm 65 years old," William told the class, "and I still feel a knot in my stomach sometimes when I walk into certain places, because I remember what it felt like to be treated as less than human. That feeling never completely goes away." For the first time, Jonathan felt a small crack in his wall of defensiveness. He thought about Jasmine's face when he had accused her. He remembered the tears in her eyes. He had made her feel that way. He had been the person who made someone feel less than human. It wasn't a complete transformation. Jonathan still struggled to fully accept responsibility for his actions. But it was the beginning of something. A tiny seed of self-awareness that might eventually grow into understanding. After the class, Jonathan approached William hesitantly. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," William said. "How do you get past it? The anger, the hurt, everything you experienced?" William looked at Jonathan thoughtfully. "You don't get past it. You carry it with you, but you can choose what you do with it. You can let it make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. You can use your pain to hurt others, or you can use it to help others understand." "I lost everything," Jonathan said quietly. "My job, my wife, my reputation. Everyone hates me." "Then the question is," William said gently, "what are you going to do with this experience? Are you going to stay angry and blame everyone else, or are you going to grow from it?" Jonathan didn't have an answer. But for the first time since the incident, he was asking himself real questions instead of just making excuses. By December, a year after the incident, the news media had mostly forgotten about the story. But the people involved hadn't forgotten. Their lives had been permanently altered by that one Tuesday morning in a bank. Jasmine was home for winter break from college. She visited the downtown branch of Sterling National Bank one afternoon just to see it. She stood outside for a moment, remembering that awful day. But the memory didn't hurt as much anymore. She had taken that pain and transformed it into something meaningful. She walked inside. The branch looked the same but felt different. Robert, the security guard, saw her immediately. His face broke into a huge smile. "Miss Jasmine," he called out. "It's so good to see you." "How's college?" "It's wonderful," Jasmine said, smiling back. "I'm studying hard and learning so much." Several employees came over to say hello. Sarah, who was visiting from her branch, hugged Jasmine. "I'm so proud of you," Sarah said. "I follow your blog. You're doing amazing things." Patricia Coleman happened to be at the branch that day conducting a follow-up review. When she saw Jasmine, she introduced herself properly for the first time. "I want you to know," Patricia said, "that what happened to you changed this entire company for the better. I'm just sorry it took your pain to make us wake up." "Change is never easy," Jasmine replied with wisdom beyond her years. "But it's necessary. Thank you for taking action instead of just making excuses." Before she left, Jasmine opened another account at the bank, a checking account to go with her savings account. It felt like completing a circle. The bank that had hurt her had also tried to make things right. She wanted to acknowledge that effort. As she walked out of the bank that day, Jasmine felt at peace. She had walked in 6 months ago as a victim. She was leaving as a survivor, an advocate, and a young woman with a bright future. Across town, Jonathan was finishing his shift at the warehouse. His back hurt from lifting heavy boxes all day. As he walked to his car in the cold December evening, he pulled out his phone. He had been thinking about William's question for weeks now. What was he going to do with this experience? Jonathan typed a message on his phone. "To Jasmine Williams and her family, I want to say I'm sorry. What I did was wrong. I hurt you and I'm truly sorry." He stared at the message for a long time. Then he deleted it. He wasn't ready yet. Maybe he never would be, but at least he had thought about it. At least he had written the words, even if he couldn't send them. Jonathan got in his car and drove home to his empty house. He was broken, humbled, and alone. But maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand what he had done and why it mattered. The incident at Sterling National Bank had changed multiple lives in profound ways. Jasmine had risen from victim to advocate. The bank had reformed its practices. Sarah and Robert had been recognized for doing what was right. Patricia had found new purpose in her work. And Jonathan? Jonathan had lost everything. His story was a cautionary tale about the consequences of prejudice and the power of accountability in the modern age. One moment of cruelty captured on camera had unraveled his entire life. The moral of the story was clear. How we treat others matters. Our biases, whether conscious or unconscious, have real effects on real people. In a world where everyone has a camera and injustice can be documented and shared instantly, there's nowhere to hide from our worst actions. But the story also showed something else. That change is possible. That institutions can reform. That young people have power. That standing up for what's right matters. That pain can be transformed into purpose. As Jasmine prepared for her second semester of college, she wrote one final blog post about the incident. She titled it, 6 Months Later, What I've Learned. In the post, she wrote, 6 months ago, I walked into a bank and walked out humiliated. Today, I'm studying to become a nurse. I'm helping other students learn about financial literacy. I'm speaking about justice and dignity. Would I want to go through that experience again? Never. Was it painful? Absolutely. But did it teach me about my own strength and the power of community? Yes. Did it lead to real change? Yes. Did it show me what I'm capable of? Yes. I'm not grateful for what happened to me, but I'm grateful for what I've become because of it. The post was shared thousands of times. People commented with their own stories of transformation. The conversation continued, and somewhere in all of that there was hope. Hope that the next time a young person walked into a bank, they would be treated with dignity. Hope that the next employee who saw someone different from them would choose compassion over suspicion. Hope that we could all learn from Jasmine's story and do better. Because in the end, that's what mattered most. Not revenge, not punishment, not shame, but change. Real, lasting, meaningful change. The kind of change that made the world a little bit better for everyone. That was Jasmine Williams's true legacy, and it would continue long after the video stopped circulating and the news cycle moved on to other stories. She had turned the worst day of her life into a catalyst for change, and that made all the difference.